Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Rosie here, and today we're going to end the year by talking about a perk. Perk we're going to be discussing is Sloppy Butcher. Now, Sloppy Butcher, Sloppy Butcher is a fairly solid perk. It has a unique place in the metagame of Dead by Daylight, and we'll get to what that place is. Uh, Sloppy Butcher, of course, started in Dead by Daylight as a perk that was bad and it only increased the blood frequency, and I didn't really start to see a surge in play until they added the mangled status effect to it. It's just so good to be able to apply a free mangled on somebody, on a survivor. That's very good. Effortless activation condition for good reward. So this perk has always been decent since that change. However, at the top of 2020, it was at kind of a weird spot, okay? And when I say at top of 2020, I, of course, am referring to the Ruin nerf. The Ruin nerf changed the game, and I think everybody knows that, okay? It was so weird to have to do that, okay? And we'll discuss why, okay? Let's take a killer. It's Freddy Krueger. He's a good, solid character. Okay, Freddy Krueger, once the Ruin change went in, he would be running something like this, okay? He'd be running something like this. Corrupt Intervention, Barbecue. That is not Barbecue, is it? Barbecue, Pop goes the Weasel, and on Freddy, you could expect to see a lot of Discordance back in the day after Ruin's nerf. Okay, this is kind of what a typical build looked like for Freddy Krueger and a lot of other characters. I remember running this on a few characters back in the day. I think this was my Trapper build. I ran this on a lot of characters back in the day. Okay, this build was 2x investment into early game, along with a Pop Goes the Weasel for Gen Stall and Barbecue and Chili. Because the killers were at a weird position when the devs took Ruin from us. When the devs took Ruin, we were ill-equipped. Okay, the Dead by Daylight devs have a really bad habit of doing this to killer. They'll take shit out of killer's kit before the killer is ready to deal with it. Like, they won't address the things on the survivor side that make what we're doing necessary. They just rip what we're using away. So when Ruin got taken out and the early game wasn't addressed, we were forced into an awkward situation because our meta perk was gone, and everybody knew that Pop had to carry the weight. And Pop was designed for a time when Ruin was in the game, so it was always meant to be supplementary. Always. So Pop now had to become... We had to force a supplementary perk up to be the main focus of a meta build. So, as you can see, all the other 3 perks around are meant to play support for Pop Goes the Weasel. You have Corrupt Intervention, which is meant to take Ruin's place as the early game perk, whereas Ruin, Corrupt Intervention as a Ruin replacement is awkward, because Ruin not only was, the backbone of the early game, it was the backbone of the meta. Corrupt Intervention and Pop are now doing what Ruin used to do in a single perk slot, okay, if you catch my drift. So Corrupt Intervention was now doing Ruin's early game utility, so hopefully you can get enough downs to where Barbecue can help you go pop gens, okay? And Discordance would kind of help you do both. It was kind of good in the early game to help you find survivors, and if it lit up, you could be assured that gen was about 85% done after you hook somebody. So basically, Discordance kind of did both, while Pop would slow the game down, and Corrupt would do Ruin's early game role. This is kind of what a pre-Undying build looked like on Freddy, and I remember doing this on other characters as well. Okay, so now you go back. So what is that? Why are we even talking about this? Because you could start to see why Sloppy Butcher wasn't used a whole bunch back in that time, because you had to do 3 perks. You had to have an entire build dedicated around getting Pop Goes the Weasel to go off. Okay, so who could actually use Sloppy Butcher? Well, Sloppy Butcher was kind of relegated to a stealth killer build in this time, or someone that actively liked people being injured, okay? So you'd see a lot of Sloppy Butcher on Wraith, Ghostface. Wraith and Ghostface were the two big ones. You could expect to see that on them every time you played against them back in the day. Shitslinger. Shitslinger is another candidate for Sloppy because he uses nurses. Basically, back in the day, it was anybody who could use nurses was the one using Sloppy Butcher. Only key exception there was Hag. Hag is the only character in the game that was probably go using Sloppy Butcher for keeping people injured. Because her power likes people being injured better than being healthy. Because Hag doesn't want to chase you. So that benefit works even to this day on her. Other niche uses of the perk, you could see it on the Myers, because he can use nurses. Pig could use it. Fucking anybody could theoretically use it. Some legions started running it after Legion was changed. Oni, because Oni likes people being injured, so you could use it on him. Just some other niche characters that could run it, but mostly you'd only be seeing it on Wraith and Ghostface and a lot of shitslingers. So what does that lead? So that trend continued, and of course with the God Loops all died out. And that other strategy became more consistent. So like a stealth killer build in that time would look like a corrupt intervention for the ruin slot, pop. So kind of these two these two perks, corrupt, pop, and then you'd see nurses. I completely passed it. I'm so dumb. Nurses, and then Sloppy Butcher. So this is kind of what like a stealth kill. This is what a Ghostface and Wraith build kind of look like. Kind of using nurses and Sloppy combination to kind of replace Barbecue's role to figure out where the pops are. And then also use Sloppy to get some downs and have extra synergy with the power. So that's kind of something you do. And then of course Hag would actually you would use Discordance to have double early game value. So you get Discordance, Corrupt Intervention to help set the board up, and then the pop would work to get the gens. Hopefully, Discordance is the thing helping you out. You kind of just don't have room for Barbecue in a Hag build. That's kind of what Hag would be running, but that's beside the point. Okay, so now, how did this change? Okay, Undying comes into the game. Okay, and the way Undying has changed everything. Okay. Because now, Undying has invited Ruin back into the game. Because Undying's consistency is now helping Ruin stay alive. And Ruin, now that it has proper support, is meta again. And I think a reason that this combination was so quick to replace what people were doing is that Pop Goes the Weasel as a main slowdown perk was weak. Pop never was built for that role. It was always meant to be supplementary. Always. Always, always, always. So trying to force it to be the main perk didn't work. Okay? So that's why as soon as Ruin became consistent, Ruin came back. Because Ruin is a lot less pushy on the killer. Because Pop was hook the person with Barbecue. Hook the person, use Barbecue and Discordance. Use like 2 other perks to figure out where the fuck you need to go to pop that generator to get the most maximum slowdown. Okay? Ruin is less like touchy-feely. I mean, you can run Barbecue with it, and Barbecue is still meta. You can run Surveillance to find out where to go, but Ruin overall is less pushy. If you're just having a good game and you have some slug pressure, Ruin is doing stuff for you whether you see it or not. Okay? Since Ruin is a lot less in charge of the killer, it's very easy to see why Undying being released and Ruin's consistency easily came to replace Pop Goes the Weasel. Okay? But in that awkward time where people were like realizing on Ruin and Undying were meta, a lot of builds look like this. A lot of builds would look like this, where you would see kind of a transitional build from the previous section of the game, from the previous meta to the current meta. A transitional build would kind of look like this, where people were figuring out Ruin Undying was meta, but like, is this trustworthy enough to fully replace Pop Goes the Weasel? But if you run something like this, and this is a build that I ran for a long time on Freddy. I ran this. Well, I was going to run it on Freddy. I still don't have Undying on Freddy, but like I ran this on Leatherface. I ran this on. This was my build for a little bit. I really thought this was the meta for a long time. Anybody I could run this on, I would run it on. Okay. But when you look at this build, you know there's one obvious thing that sticks out. It's that Pop doesn't synergize with Ruin. And that's one thing that the devs made very, very clear when they nerfed Ruin, is that Pop is not going to synergize with it. So you now have this awkward slot, which you are waiting for Ruin Undying to die in order to open up that last slot. Okay? And provided you're a good killer, when Ruin Undying is dead, you've won already. Well, not that you've won already, but you have a lot of pressure on the board. And so Pop Goes the Weasel might only be smacking 2 gens. Ruin Undying's consistency is working. Okay, this is a consistent option. SWF can take care of it in like 5 minutes, but like that's swift. And again, provided you're a good killer, you have a bit of pressure on the board already, even with these. Even when it leaves the game, the combination has already done something for you. And if they were swift, they would be beating you no matter what you're running, so don't even worry about that. But like the point is, you have Pop, which is sitting here as a supplementary slowdown perk that's not doing jack shit. Okay? So you can kind of see my point here about how if you don't use Pop, you can throw on Sloppy as your supplementary slowdown build. Now you have a build where Sloppy Butcher is doing something for you the entire time. The slower heals are synergizing with Ruin Undying because Ruin's depleting the gen as the heal is taking place, and the heal takes longer, so you're getting more Ruin value. Okay? So, you can kind of see why Sloppy Butcher is kind of replacing Pop in a lot of my builds. I think, because now that Pop has been downgraded back to its designated role as a supplementary slowdown perk, there is an answer to the question of which perk synergizes better with Ruin Undying, and the answer is obviously Sloppy Butcher. Because Sloppy Butcher can synergize with the 2 perks while they're active, and then also when they're dead. Because by the time the perks are dead, and there's like 3 gens left, and then maybe 1 survivor is dead, Sloppy Butcher can clean up that late game. Okay? Sloppy Butcher can clean that late game up. And then it also just makes a lot of build design easier, because if you're playing a stealth killer, you can just swap out Barbecue for Nurses. Instead of like having to change 2 or 3 perks on every single build for every single character, this is probably Wraith's best build right now. Ruin Undying, Sloppy, and Nurses. But like, if you don't, this is only true if you're running Undying. If you're running Ruin, you might want to throw Pop Goes the Weasel back in there. But like, a build would look something like this. I think because we have seen what Ruin can do, Pop Goes the Weasel, at best, is just going to be Ruin's replacement. Because we can now see what Ruin is capable of doing with Undying, it's very clear that, like, Ruin's never going to leave the game again. And I think that is just so obvious. In fact, when Undying gets nerfed, because you know the devs are coming for it, if Undying does get nerfed, we'll have to read the nerf before we can even see if Pop's gonna come back. If that nerf isn't too bad, like if they just take the aura away from it, like that aura reveal thing, if they just take that away from Undying, Undying's still here. Undying's still here. It's the RNG aspect that Undying is ran for, less than the auras. The aura is just a nice like benefit on top of that, but. You know, this kind of thing just has synergy with everybody. And it's like, well, isn't it boring to play the same perks over and over again? It's never boring to get your character to work. Never, ever boring to get your character to work. Like, I'm sorry, I just completely disagree with that notion. And plus, survivors run the same shit over and over again. We see Dead Hards, BDS, Borrow, like, no. Like, it's never boring to play the same shit over and over and over again. Because there's nothing, like, the killer has the appeal of being able to play different characters. So it doesn't matter, like, these perks, I don't think everyone understands this. These perks let us play. If you don't run these perks and you play against a good team, you're dead. You can't win with anything that's not this on Wraith. You can't win with anything that's not this on Trapper. And on Trapper, of course, you'd run something. And then on Trapper, you have one perk slot, I think. And of course, I mean, you're free to not use Sloppy Butcher at all. If you think Ruin Undying is good enough on Trapper, you could run something like this. This is good on Trapper right here, or like you could run stuff on anybody. This is also probably a good build on Hag, but like Sloppy Butcher acting as a supplementary slowdown perk, I think is the game's meta. And then you have one slot to play around with. If you're somebody like I can answer on every single character right now what the thing to play around with is. Trapper, I would throw on a Corrupt Intervention. Billy, Barbecue. Wraith, Nurses Calling. Wraith, Nurses Calling. Nurse, Infectious Fright. Nurse, Infectious Fright. And then the list goes on and on. And then, of course, if you don't do this, that's probably where you're the sign of that you're a weak killer. For example, Myers can't do this because Myers needs Infectious and Corrupt Intervention. So you see, you can kind of see how since Myers needs 2 perks, he doesn't have access to Sloppy Butcher. Okay, this is probably what the best Myers build is right now in its current form. And then, of course, one of the characters that's like having a hard time right now is Shitslinger, because what Shitslinger can't decide is if he wants to use his add-ons for Mangled and then run Corrupt and Nurses, or if he wants to give up Corrupt Intervention to run Nurses and Sloppy. That's Shitslinger's whole dilemma. Like, every killer has a different dilemma, but all in all, you can kind of see what they want to be doing. Because it's like, I can already tell you, okay, Trapper, we said Corruption, Wraith, Nurses, Billy, Barbecue, Nurse, Infectious, Huntress would probably be Nurses Calling, Myers has trouble, Hag wants Corrupt Intervention, Bubba wants Barbecue, Doctor wants Barbecue, Freddy wants Barbecue, Pig wants Barbecue, Clown wants Barbecue, Spirit wants Barbecue, Legion wants Barbecue, Plague wants Barbecue, Ghostface wants Nurses, Demo wants Barbecue, Oni wants Infectious, Shitslinger was having a bit of trouble. Pyramid Head wants Infectious or Barbecue. He can do either one. Blight wants Barbecue. And then the Twins want, I don't know. I'm kind of working with the Twins right now. I use Corrupt Intervention on them right now. I kind of want Barbecue. We'll see, though. We'll see where the road goes for one. But, like, you can see, like, this kind of 3-perk combination now is helping Killer go off. And you can see that every single character wants this in their build. I don't know. The state of Sloppy Butcher at the beginning of 2020, it kind of started off as a weird, like, thing that only stealth killers would run. I mean, everybody kind of had an argument for it, but if you didn't run... But, like, if you were running it, you probably were missing something. And the Hag was a weird extension. But it has ended 2020 as... probably the best supplementary slowdown perk in the game, and that's just the power of Ruin Undying. That's the power of power creep. Once you get a concept, like all of the old perks don't fall out of favor when power creep hits them. Sometimes power creep can bring stuff back that was a gimmick or falling out of favor anyway. That's what these devs don't seem to understand, and I think Sloppy Butcher was a prime example of that. GG's, lads. Good year. We'll see what happens next year.